Good evening. We'll open tonight's city council work meeting, bring this to order. Is there a motion on tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda. I'd like to flip-flop items 3 and 4. So number 3 would be the budget discussion for 2023, and number 4 would be the public forum discussion.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any discussion? Hearing none. To the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. On to our 2023 budget discussion. Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Minnesota Public Employees Association submitted an initial labor agreement proposal for review at the April 21st City Personnel Committee meeting. After a series of meetings between city staff and the union and city council, the labor agreement was approved at the June 13th City Council meeting. The labor agreement included employee wage adjustments of 3%, 3.5%, and 3.5% for 2023, 2024, and 2025 respectively. The labor agreement was also included increases to cafeteria contributions for city employees. After the union labor agreement was ratified, the City Finance Committee met with city staff to review and discuss the 2023 budget inputs and assumptions. The Finance Committee also discussed the city general fund balance, the actual city financial performance for the prior year, and the city's debt service requirements. Based on inputs from the Personnel Committee, Finance Committee, department heads, and City Council, the budget model and budget book were prepared for the City Council to review at tonight's meeting. The overall 2023 proposed general fund expenditure budget is projected to increase by 4%, or $253,800. This expenditure increase would then result in a corresponding levy increase of 4.7%, or $284,300, in order to balance the 2023 budget. Overall, the general tax levy, debt service levy, EDA levy, and HRA levy would increase by 4.6%, or $284,300. The 2023 budget model currently reflects the following expenditure inputs, which are the primary drivers of the overall increase. Staff salaries and benefits per the union contracts for a 3% COLA increase, an increase of the cafeteria contribution of $4,425 per month. This is a $25 increase per month. For the fire department payroll, the wage adjustment increase for 35 paid on-call firefighters is $19,000. For contracted services, the law enforcement contract with the Anoka County Sheriff's Office was proposed to increase 8%, or $94,000. The city attorney contract was proposed to increase 3%, or $5,000. And the Metro INET JPA was proposed to increase $20,000. Fuel expenses were proposed to increase $15,000, and transfers to the capital funds were proposed to increase $5,000 to the Park Capital Fund. City staff from administration, finance, fire, and public works are present tonight in their proposals, to present their proposals, and are available for questions on line items in their budgets. The Anoka County Sheriff's Department will present their contract and budget proposal in an upcoming council meeting on July the 11th. The remaining schedule for the discussion and consideration of the 2023 budget is tentatively set as other council meetings required prior to September 12th, 2022. September 12th City Council meeting will be the consideration of the preliminary 2023 budget and levy, and the December 12th Council meeting will be the consideration of the final 2023 budget and levy. At this time, city staff and department heads will present their budget requests and be able to answer any questions council may have, and then council and staff will review the remainder of the budget. At this time, I'd like to ask Chief DeSharm to come to the podium and present his request, and he will be available for any questions you may have of him.
Okay. Evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and citizens. So for the 2023 Fire Department budget, the main increase deals with our labor costs, manpower costs, and that also ties in with the increase in calls, where we're seeing, as I've been reporting monthly, record increase. We're pretty sure that the increase is going to proceed past 2022 into 2023. Some of the other areas that where we went up also tie into some historical data. One thing about the training budget, which is 434, the training budget is reimbursable. Some of it from the Minnesota Board of Firefighter Training and Education. This fiscal year, which just ended, the state fiscal year, we're looking at about a $5,000 reimbursement. And then on the odd years, we usually see quite a bump in that, in the neighborhood of about $15,000 to $20,000. I think last year their reimbursement was probably closer to $30,000. Other than that, we are looking as far as on the capital side, looking at finish up some purchasing this year, and also next year looking at replacing some rescue equipment that's over 20 years old. Anybody have any questions?
Mark, one of my questions is your motor fuels. Is that 5,000 gonna be enough with the cost of diesel that continues to go up?
Well, we really don't know that. You know, it's kind of like throwing darts at a wall or at a map, and hoping it hits the right way. Obviously, you know, gas has almost doubled, if it hasn't doubled in this year, in 2022. But diesel, our big trucks are diesels. A couple of the grass rigs are diesel, and the utilities diesel. And then we run a couple, 3 gasoline vehicles.
Do you know what your budget was this year? Do you know what the budget was this year, Mike, for their gas, without me digging through?
212. Budget was 15,000.
Yeah, I think it was
15,000.
15,000, yeah.
Now it's 20.
So, and a lot of that also, Counselor, ties in with our calls, because obviously the more calls, the more we use the vehicles.
Would you be able to tell me what the average monthly pay for any given firefighter is, and what the highest monthly pay for somebody at the fire department would be?
Well, they're paid, you know, per hour.
Right.
And so the highest, I think, is around $18 without digging through, $18.50. And then a new recruit that comes on is in about, I think it's about the $12 an hour range.
Right, which isn't very much, but I'm just wondering how many hours and the average one works and what that would be total.
Yeah, I can work those numbers up for you. I'm not at this time to give you the, you know, specific amount. I can work them up and funnel that to Jack, and he can send them to you.
Okay.
You know, we do have firefighters that put in a tremendous amount of time, and then we have some that you know, put in
Right.
just the minimum amount.
I figured that.
Your average firefighter, by the way, probably is you know, earns about $400 a month.
Okay. Good. I was
Yeah.
just wondering.
Yeah, they
Very
do
much.
about $400 a month. Your average firefighter, I think the last time we ran the numbers, is running in the neighborhood of 12 calls a month. And then the mandatory training that goes with that, which is another 6 to 8 hours a month.
Okay, thank you.
If you take the 2022 budget figures, they were paid approximately $180,000, and that would be, if we use the 35 figure, that would be somewhere a little over between $400 and $500 a month, just the average.
Okay, I have no problem with your budget. I was just
Sure.
curious.
No, that's fine. But I will look that up for you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mark, you mentioned that labor cost increase is the bigger part of the budget increase for fire department. So, so two questions. How are we looking right now versus on our current budget, projection-wise? Do we know where you think we're gonna end up at the end of the year?
I think you might be a little bit over on the payroll side, but I think overall on the budget, we'll pretty much be right on spot.
So, in looking at, just kind of looking at the numbers, you know, we have an overtime budget we didn't have last year,
Right.
and that's because of,
Our fire inspector. So our fire inspector also answers off-duty calls.
oh, and his call time is
Right.
overtime.
Right. And that's how we list that to make sure that we're within compliance.
So then, the third line with the part-time employees, that's the majority of the firefighters?
Yes, that's all of fire, yeah,
Okay.
that would be the rest of the firefighters.
So, on that line item, we're increasing it roughly 19,000,
Right.
and then another 12,000, so $30,000
$30,000,
increase.
Right.
And that's just solely due to our anticipated
Call
call
volume.
load
Call volume, yes.
increasing that much.
Increasing, yes.
How much
Well, two things happen here. The firefighters were on a step-up pay plan,
okay,
and this is the last year, and then actually 23 for a little bit is the last years of that. So there's another step there that,
so it's the it's the
Right.
adjustment,
right,
Okay.
where we brought them up to
right?
more of the norm of the area for firefighters.
Okay. In 21, how much did we bump up the budget from 21 to 22? It's not listed here, but in the table. I'm just trying to figure, it seems like we're maybe over planning for what the call load will be next year, from a budget standpoint. I mean, that's a pretty sizable increase, you know, it's 40 grand more, so.
So we've come off, you also have to remember, we've come off into the streak of what I would call real minimal staffing. And the past 6 months, we've seen an increase in calls and average calls per call, firefighters per call.
Okay.
You know, we probably went from like, you know, the first half of the first 3 months of the year, we're averaging anywhere from 2 to 3, and now you're seeing more like 6 to 7. So I'd be a little bit skeptical of paring that down a little bit.
Well, I'm just,
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out how you came up with that
Sure.
number based on our performance this year
Yeah,
already,
so the long and short is that, you know, we try to estimate the calls,
Right,
and then we try to estimate, and there is no clear formula. So we estimate the calls, try to predict the number of calls for 23, and then we try to predict how many firefighters per call are gonna, is what the average is gonna be. Where, you know, in that projection is 6 per call, 6 to 7. And then from there, you know, what the split of is, you know, on the, you know, how many of those are senior people, your higher paid people, and how many are the, you know, towards the bottom of the pay scale that are coming up the ranks. And that's how we come up with that.
Yeah.
So this year, you know, right at this point, we're going to be looking at 850 to 900 calls. And if this continues, we'll be, you know, probably in the over 1,000 for 23, which is a lot of calls.
so in terms of budget increase from last year, shouldn't say increase, a difference from last year. Really what's, it's not new acquisitions, it's not new staff.
No,
It's just dealing with workload
that's right.
and
And-
your
and-
our anticipated
And
effort to address the workload.
maintaining the fleet, maintaining the facilities, maintaining the training. So.
Right, but that we always do,
Yep,
but the cost of doing that's
Is-
going up
is
because
all
labor
going
costs
up,
up.
right. You know, for example, we're down to 30 firefighters, and very likely, it'll be not next week, but what I call the fire department council meeting, which is the last one of the month. You know, we're gonna bring across, we believe, 5 names for that applicants that.
Good.
So we're, you know, and I think I've said that, I try to maintain that 35 to 37 number, even though the authorization is 40. That's just a good number to manage.
Okay. Other questions for Chief? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mark.
Roads and Parks.
Good evening, Mayor, council members.
Even Nate.
I'm here tonight to answer any questions you have on the parks maintenance operation budget and the street maintenance operation budget. And as well, if you have any questions on recycling, water and sewer, the arena, and the equipment replacement fund as well, I can answer some of those on the expenditure side. Begin with the park maintenance budget. This is page 44 in your, in the actual budget. The increases we are seeing for our proposed 2023 budget focus mainly around the labor agreement with the union. And we increased our motor fuel cost by $3,000 in the parks side of it. Most of the other items in the in that operations budget have remained the same. They've pretty much stayed the same over the last 5 years or so. So we're not asking for any upgrades in any of those, with the exception of the chemical and chemical products. So this is fertilizer, chemicals used for turf management. All those prices have gone way up this year. So we're already seeing that we're going to be behind in that line item for this year, but we'll be okay overall for the budget for 2022.
How are we doing on salt?
We're good on salt. Yep.
We got a good stockpile?
We got a good stockpile.
Okay.
We actually lowered our amount that we're gonna purchase this year because of what we had left over from last year, so.
Okay.
And they've kind of increased where we're at, what we can do for, they give us more cushion on either side for what we bid. They used to give us a 10% cushion, now the state's giving everybody 20% because of the big fluctuations we've had in winter weather. So. Any questions on the parks side of things at all?
Any questions, council? Okay.
We can go to the road maintenance budget. That's on page 50 of your packet. There again, the same increases. These two budgets are somewhat interchangeable. We use a lot of the same equipment. The motor fuels are kind of interchangeable. We have a formula that we break it down between the two departments. So this one has an increase in the motor fuel cost as well from $33,000 to $40,000. So a $7,000 increase in motor fuels. The other one that had an increase was the tires budget. We're finding that we're coming up short every year on our tires. So we bumped that up a little bit to help kind of absorb those costs.
Okay. Questions on streets?
This budget's highly dependent on weather events, so it can go summer storms or all the winter storms. We can have great fluctuations in here, but whenever we have leftover money, it goes back into the capital, into the general fund, so it's able to be reused for future budgets too.
Do you usually have money left over? Is that a common thing?
We have in the past couple of years, yes, yep. I think I have it written down here. In 2020, we had about 95,000 left over that went back into the general fund. and in 2021, about 113,000. Part of that was due to some, we had some older employees leave service, and so we started over with new hires at the bottom of the pay scale. So that was some of that savings we saw in the last couple of years too.
Okay, any other questions for Nate?
Anything on equipment replacement or recycling, water, sewer?
Yeah, I like the fact that pretty much up and down the board, it's, you know, really didn't change budget except for the things that
The
were
contract.
Try
affected
and
by
keep it as
costs that
flat
we
as
had no
possible,
control
yeah.
on, so that's good.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
Great,
Thanks,
thanks, Nate. Next.
With that, we'll start with the beginning of the budget, the mayor and city council.
Sure, what we've done in the past is just kind of go by topic and just go down the list and in general, so.
As you can see, there is, could you scroll that up just a little bit, Mike, so we can see the bottom line on that? As you can see, there's been no change in the overall budget cost for this category. It's remained the same from 2022 to proposed in 2023. So it's still $77,900 with no change in that. And again, the reason for that is city council hasn't had any salary increases in several decades. So those major costs stay essentially the same. Our costs for professional services and dues and subscriptions remain fairly constant too, so there is no proposed change in this budget item.
So this is, I'm looking, I don't think I'm looking at the same thing. I'm looking at the summary page, so this is a different, is this actually in our
Yeah,
packet?
one more, come up with the mayor.
The next, behind that.
Oh, you want to go by subject matter?
So which page is it?
Yep, page 8.
We can do it by, we'll just do city administration.
All
first.
right, okay, okay.
This is page,
8.
So maybe let's speed this up a little bit, because that's a lot of pages to go through. If you go through on page 5, is the summary, and it's broken up into
Yep.
bigger categories, so maybe speed up our discussion. So in terms of general government, that's on here, does anyone have any questions on any of the line items under general government?
Actually, I do, because I was looking at these numbers and they weren't, I wasn't really understanding why the, up and down from 2020 to 2021 in a couple of the areas. And I guess that my first problem is up in the top line under property tax, that it's blank in the actual 1/1/22 to 5/31/22. Is there a reason there's no number in there?
We haven't
haven't
received
got it
our
yet.
first half settlement yet.
Yep,
When-
so-
when-
You get every 6 months, right?
Yeah,
So this
So we
is,
haven't got the first 6 months.
so essentially the way this is arranged or put together is we have our 2020 actual. This is something that's been completed and audited, so these numbers are actually foot with your audit report. 2021 also has been completed and audited, so that would foot with your audit report. This is something that we just pulled straight from the accounting system then through the month of May. So the reason why this doesn't have any activity is because the city gets paid twice a month or twice a year, and the first payment comes in July. So through the month of May, we haven't actually received any property tax. So again, this just kind of gives you a flavor of where we are through May 31st of 2022, so.
Okay, I was just wondering why it was blank. It
Yep.
didn't make any sense to
Yep.
me. Now it does. So, looking at the licensing and fees, in 2020, it was 31,000, then it jumped to 36, then it was back down to 33, and then the 2022 budget, it's 39. Is that because you're having, tell me why.
Yep, so essentially in 2020, the main driver of that category is our liquor licenses, and in 2020, I believe you gave back a refund of partial liquor licenses, so that was actually credited back against that account. So that kind of explains the variance between 2021 and 2020. And then essentially the way we derive the number for 2023 is we have a spreadsheet that kind of adds up all the liquor licenses we anticipate receiving, all the tobacco licenses we anticipate receiving, and then we just add them up and it comes up to that $39,000 mark. So
Okay, and what about the state aid columns? How come we get so much some years and so much less other years? Like in 2021, it was 293 and some change, and our budget is 268. I don't know if we're going to get that or not, but why the difference?
Yep. So essentially, the way we kind of derive that is just looking at historical data to kind of see what the state of Minnesota is going to give us for fire aid and street aid are our two main, I guess, drivers of that category. So we estimate based upon what we've kind of seen in prior years, and then forecasting with what the state budget looks like into the 2023. So again, it's a forecast, and that number does fluctuate year to year, and we don't get a actual concrete number until close to November of the budget year. So
And the biggest portion of that is their municipal state aid road money for maintenance. And the state reduced that amount, as Mike said, we just get it toward the end of the year where we know what that figure is, so that can fluctuate year to year on what they have to allocate.
Okay. Now, does the federal government give the state the money and then we get money, or this is straight from state taxes?
correct, yeah.
Okay,
Yep. And one of the things you'll note on this entire column here is not all of our money comes in, on a month-to-month basis. Some comes in every 6 months, some comes in quarterly. So again, you really got to dive into the details to kind of see if these numbers are truly lagging behind for the year. For the state aid one, this one we get paid twice a year. So this one comes up a little earlier than the actual tax settlement. But I think the next payment for this will be October.
okay.
Yep.
And the cemetery revenue, why would it go from 5,000 to 10,000 and back to 5,000?
Again, that's just a wild guess because we have no idea how much demand we're gonna have for our cemetery services. Looking historically how that one is done, we just wanted to budget conservatively at the $5,000 mark. Again, it looks like we had $10,000 worth of activity in 2021, but historically that has really been around $5,000, so.
Okay, so you're just doing what they average. All right, that's all I have on that thing. I just didn't understand how those numbers were fluctuating so much. And can we jump down to community development? Why is
Well,
it?
let's,
Oh.
in terms of revenues, anyone else have any questions on the revenue side of things? And what about general government? That's one where Jack started with. Okay, now on the community development.
Okay, thank you.
Just do it in order.
It's all good. Why is it such an increase of 5% and 7% when everything else is like 4% for wages and stuff? Planning and zoning and building inspection. I mean, I know some of it's wages, but what's the rest of it?
Yep, a majority of that is wages, so essentially, we have a 3.5% increase to just a COLA increase for the employees in that department. But we also had an employee have a step increase, so again, that then is added to that budget. And the third item then that relates to wages is our recent hire, our permit technician actually was hired at a higher grade than the previous employee. So again, that is also figured in there. So those three components really add up to the reason why that budget is increasing at that clip.
Okay, that makes sense. But you mentioned something I have a question about, and I'm gonna ask it now, because I don't know where else in this budget talk we could ask it. As far as the, grade and step, how do people get their increases? How does that work?
Again, you know, we've had a couple of discussions on this in the past, at the public forum. That pay grade matrix was established long before any of us were here. We did some research to find out how it was generated. We don't find anything prior to 2004 in any of the records that we searched, and suspect that it may have been part of a pay equity plan that had to be submitted to the state every 3 years. And this is very typical of what other cities do. So you have a pay grade that associates with the job description, and in that pay grade, there's 7 steps to completion. So most people prior to COVID were hired in at step A and graduated to step G. With COVID in the labor market the way it is, we've found out that we've had to hire people in higher steps, but that's what we have on the generation of that. I did some work and looked to compare what the city of East Bethel's pay rates are per position, and with the exception of 2 positions, we're paid less than the metro average of what cities of comparable size to us are. So, again, this pay grade was developed, and it's very typical. Every city uses something of this nature to establish consistency for these pay grades for each job description, and that's essentially what they're used for. You know, where it came from is an uncertain question to answer, but it's something that's very useful and something you have to identify and keep consistency within your pay grades and steps.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't understand how a person, if they get hired at grade 2, step B, how do they move to step C? How do they move to grade 6? I don't understand that.
Well,
There's nothing I've seen that explains that.
The way our system is, at the end of 6 months, your probationary period, if you pass probation, you move up a step grade. And then at the end of your anniversary year, you move up another step grade, if approved, until you hit the top of the grade. Once you hit the top of the grade, unless you're promoted or there's a huge change in your job description, you're locked into that grade for the tenure of your employment.
What about the steps? How do people move from step A to step B to step C?
It's based on your anniversary date of your employment, and it's reviewed, and if you're approved for the step increase, then you get that step increase annually.
So it takes you 7 years to get from step A to step, 6 years.
6
with
years.
the 6, yeah, with the probation.
Correct.
You get it at your 6-month probation and then every year after that. So it takes you 6 years to go from step A to step G.
So in addition to their raises that we just voted them, the 3% raise, they get they could be getting a $10 a year hour raise or something like that, right? They can go from $23.19 to $25.51 to $26.41. So that's,
That's a dollar, a 90-cent raise.
no, if they're at step B, they're gonna jump to step C, grade 5 in the same year. That's 23 to 26.
No, you don't change grades, you just change steps.
Change
You may-
steps.
You may remain in that same grade. So it goes across rather than up and down.
So people's grades don't go up.
Correct.
So you're essentially hired on at, say, grade 6, that's gonna be your pay for this position. You start off at 27, the end of the 6 years or so, you get
You're up to
33.03.
Yep.
Okay, because I misunderstood what Jack was explaining before, that he was saying every year they go up a grade and a step, but it's not a grade, it's just a step every year. Okay,
And it would have to be negotiated if their job description changed greatly for the grade change.
okay, I got it. That's all I have for my questions on
So anything else on community development? Okay, on to public safety. Can you did we have a discussion at all with the sheriff's department about their proposal, or did they just submit a proposal?
No, we had a basic meeting with Derek Peters last week and asked him what he knew about the reason for the increases. And he said somebody else would have to answer that question, and that's when we asked that, somebody show up at our next meeting to be able to present the contract and explain the rationale behind that. It's traditionally what's done every year on the sheriff's contract. So he's working out those details, and we're scheduled to have that person here at the next meeting.
So, just so the public can maybe not see this, we normally have about a 3% increase on the sheriff's contract. And last week, we were presented with a proposal for an 8% increase. And the sheriff's contract makes up about 20% of our budget, or close to it. So that's a definite effect, so. I don't know how much we want to talk about if we don't know why it went up, so.
Well, I don't know, and it's pure speculation, is the inflation rate at this time was 8%. I don't know if that's, they calculated that, but we just asked them to be here to present the budget
Okay.
and explain the increases.
Have we heard from any other cities on what their increases were? Did we ask at all?
No, we haven't
We
heard
haven't
from them.
asked. I'd just be curious to hear what some other comparables are.
Does anybody know off the top of their head if we're getting, if this had an increase in deputies or CSOs or anything like that, or are they the same?
I think Derek told us basically it was a result of inflation overall and their union agreement contract. So other than that, he wasn't
Did
exactly.
they have a new union contract?
I didn't think that they did.
I
I
think they
thought
did
that was
either.
negotiated last year or the year before.
Yeah, I remember that, so, well.
We'll find
I
out
guess
next
we'll have to
week.
wait to find out, so. Because honestly, right now, I think we need to send that back and have them redo their proposal.
Redo,
so.
reject.
Well, not reject, it's just, I'm a little dismayed that they would just present something
Yep.
without explaining why it's going up so much, so. Okay. Fire protection, is there, Mark's already been up here, is there any other discussion on the fire protection budget? Okay. Engineering, that's staying the same.
Correct.
Public Works, Nate's been up here, any other discussions on the Public Works budget? Civic events, I assume that's the cost of fireworks.
Correct.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
That's still reasonable, from what I've heard of some of the other cities.
Well, and we've been paying the same amount for a long
Long
time,
time.
so,
Yeah, they raised their prices this year.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
it's not surprising. And then transfers, which you kind of went over, we just increased the Parks capital transfers.
See, I don't know if it's a misprint, Jen, on the capital thing. It says general fund transfer 100,000. Don't we just transfer 5,000? They're up to 100,000, right? On page 82?
Yeah, that's the proposed.
They're at 100,000, but we only transfer 5,000.
So they're at 95, we're transferring 5, that'll bring
We'll
it.
put them up to 100.
Put them up to 100, which is
Okay,
what
I mean,
they
that's
were.
just kind of
Yeah.
misleading there, that
Yeah.
we're putting 100,000 into a
Well,
And-
that is, on this page?
82 right here.
Yeah, that's the budget. Last year
Yeah.
was 95,000.
Right, it goes up another 5, but it makes it sound like they're putting 100,000 in this year, I mean,
Oh.
according to this.
Oh,
But it's only 5, and that brings them up to the level that they were in 2011.
Okay.
So my question on that is, do we want to keep them at that level or continue to have a $5,000 increase per year? And if we do, what's the cap?
Well, that's what I was talking a couple of, on the Parks Commission, back I think might have been Steve's time, they had two different budgets. They had a parks and then they had a
And
trail
a trail
budget.
budget.
And I think do not have a trail budget anymore?
The-
Am I wrong, or?
The trail budget was canceled in 2012, I believe, for the 2012 budget. There was about $62,000 in that budget at that time, and then that money was used to reduce the levy amount down. So they decided to do away with that category, and it hasn't been used since then. What we do, we fund trail projects out of the other Parks Capital and the Parks Acquisition Fund budgets now.
Do we have a need for a trails fund?
With the way that we're able to do trails and get those in with property owner approvals in the process, we've had a fairly ample amount of money to do the projects we have listed. And if we wanted to accelerate those, then maybe that's something we need to look at. But as far as your question goes, is there a cap on that? I think we just have to look at that on an annual basis and decide what the needs are. It's like the roads transfer, we brought that up from 425 to 500 over the last 5 years, I believe. I think we're still a little short in that category, but we just didn't feel like this was the year to do the traditional $25,000 transfer into that account. But I think all these are gonna have to be looked at increasing if we want to do these improvements.
If I remember right, the Trails Fund was created as a separate fund because there was a concerted effort back then to do trails. And then now it's pretty much just part of the whole parks thing too. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, wasn't there something with Cedar Creek too, at that time, funding part of a
Yeah.
trail that, a
that was-
joint
that was a
trail?
little different.
Yeah, that's, there was a proposal to do a trail from Booster East to 229th, which had been a paved trail, and then cross the road and connect that to go up to Cedar Creek Ecosystem and Scientific Reserve, where our parking lot and picnic shelter is with a natural surface trail. Actually, there was one fund that was approved, and they were actually gonna talk about using some MSA funds, which that's an eligible expense to do that. But then that was canceled in 2011. The trails vision now has kind of shifted, or the plan has kind of shifted to try to make logical connections between parks, utilize existing widened shoulder roads wherever possible, to do a regional trail system or one that links things all over the city is maybe not totally practical. We're just trying to do those extensions that make sense where you can connect point A to point B and not do one of these projects where it may have several segments and risk not being completed. So we're actually making a connection between a park and a park or a park and another destination.
We've asked some builders to put trails in,
That's-
like on Baton, didn't we ask?
That's
That was
correct.
part of that
And
curb
that-
and
that-
gutter thing.
Yeah, that was part of their park dedication fee. Those monies were used for that trail
Yeah,
system
we
there.
actually had a trail dedication fund for a while,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
So,
That's where the $62,000
Right, yeah,
partially
so I
came
remember that.
from.
I remember a couple
Yeah.
developments when that came in. That was-
And then actually the city did some transfers into that too.
yeah.
Oh, I can see the way that, looking at the parks budget like we did, where that would be just transferring money back and forth, you know, from parks to trails and trails to park. I don't see a need for two different
No.
Well,
categories.
to me, if there's two funds, then you know, it kind of shows, policy direction that, you know, that there's trails and there's parks and.
And where do the
And if
funds
there's
from?
and if there's funds in the trails fund, then it's kind of a direction to eventually utilize those funds, so.
Yeah, at the time, that fund was to be used exclusively and only for trails.
Yeah, I mean, there was a different perspective on trails way back then, it was a little more grandiose, but, I'm fine either way. I mean, they're getting addressed, just having one fund too, so.
Yeah, I'd say it's working.
It's working.
Okay.
And so then do we wanna keep transferring 5,000 a year to the parks?
I say we take a look at it next year and see where we are in our budget process and make the decision at that time.
Okay. That's
And they
fair.
have some big plans that they'd like to get into in the upcoming years that it may take a little more
Yeah,
help,
yeah.
a little more help from
Yeah.
city council.
Or planning, so. Okay. One question I have is, at the finance committee meeting, the original proposal that we saw on budget was a 4% levy increase. And at the finance committee, we talked and eventually approved using a portion of our, what I'll call, I hate to call it excess reserves, but reserves above our targeted 40%, and to use some of those reserves to basically pay down the levy for this year. And we talked about that, and that would have brought it down to less than 2%. And now everything's changed with the sheriff's contract. So how did that get incorporated in here? I thought there'd be like a line item or something.
Yep, so essentially, we left that component out when we wanted to display this first rendition of the budget. So the proposed budget as it sits is that 4.7% increase. And then going back to Steve's point of using some of this excess fund balance potentially to bring down that overall levy increase. If you look at where our fund balance sits at the end of 2021, it's $3.4 million. And then we anticipate again, kind of ending the year 2022 with the same fund balance because we have a balanced budget. So that would mean we essentially have an excess of fund balance of roughly $143,000, okay, that you could, and that's an excess over that 50% of the 2023 general fund expenditures. So again, you could apply that $143,000 to bring down your overall levy increase. And again, from that 4.7, if you had a line item that applied this balance, then it would bring it down to roughly 2.2% levy increase. So that's how that would kind of factor in. So there's three kind of components if you wanted to look at ways to reduce your overall levy. Again, you can look at your sheriff contract. Again, that's at that 8%, increase at this point. You're going to get a presentation next council meeting to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of that increase. So again, we'll look at that in a little bit more in depth. Also at the finance committee meeting, we talked about that vacation and sick time sellback. So it's another thing that can be addressed if you're looking at ways to reduce your 2023 expenditures. And then the third thing, I guess, that we discussed then is using some of that fund balance then just to bring down the overall levy, which again, we're looking at roughly $143,000. So those are really the three, I think, main components if you're looking at ways to reduce the impact to your taxpayers for 2023.
So I thought at the finance committee, we'd agreed that we were gonna spend half that to knock that down from 4% to 2%.
Well, I thought we were waiting for the sheriff's contract to see
Well,
what
we
they
knew that would
came in.
happen, but I just wanna make clear, because when we started, it said this incorporated the finance committee recommendation, so not all the recommendations are in here.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was my takeaway from the meeting that we were gonna just show it as is, and then this would be one of the items that would be looked at as far as potential ways to reduce the overall levy increase.
Okay.
Same thing with the sheriff contract and same thing with the vacation.
Vacation
and-
buyback.
Yep.
So we're at 4.7%, and if we spend that $143,000, what's that bring that 4.7 down to?
Roughly 2.2%.
Okay.
I have a question that, regarding the assessment of all these home values, that the taxes went up, home taxes are going up significantly, so is everybody else's. Doesn't that increase our revenue a lot, or does it? Not
Nope,
at all?
it has no effect on the overall, money that the city brings in. The city essentially receives the amount of money that they levy, so the two things are kind of mutually exclusive. So if your value goes up, It doesn't mean that the city receives more money. It just means that the spread on how the city gets the money is different, so.
Okay.
You mentioned everyone's taxes, their property values went up,
Yeah, but
not our taxes. We haven't done our
my
budgets
taxes
yet.
are going up quite a bit too, so.
We haven't,
it's not
we haven't done
East
our budgets
Bethel.
yet. It's not anyone's budget yet.
Well, it was proposed, I just got that proposed statement, and I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
No one's even proposed their taxes yet. That's what we're doing right now is budget. Are you talking about last year?
Well, maybe I'm doing my.
Yeah, the
taxes
proposed
wrong.
tax statements don't go out
Yeah,
till November, right? In November, so.
Never mind, but they
Okay.
still went up. last
So
year.
everyone's, remember we talked about this, everyone's value is going up, but not, their taxes don't necessarily
I
go
got
up,
it.
so.
Okay,
Okay, so sheriff's coming in the next council, next week?
That's the plan, yes.
Okay. And they'll be prepped with, we'll have lots of questions of why it's going up.
I think they're well aware of that.
Because if it says Sheriff Stewart, I don't know if he's gonna be able to have all the details, so I just wanna make sure there's someone here for details, so.
Well, it will be either Sheriff Stewart or someone that's knowledgeable of the contract.
Okay,
We made
alright,
that, we
alright.
made that perfectly clear. Derek said he wasn't the one that could answer that, but he would make sure there would be someone here that could answer our questions
Okay.
regarding the contract.
Are you gonna be here next week, Mike, to listen to
Can be.
this?
And be sure.
So we can say, what was that 5 years ago?
Well, I think too, we could probably look at last year's proposal and get an idea where they're I mean, obviously fuel prices and stuff like that.
Last year's
But
proposal.
nowhere near, I mean, our labor costs aren't going up 8%, so.
No. Last year's proposal was what, less than 1%?
I thought so, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty low.
It was
last year.
reasonable and everybody
Yeah.
went, wow, that's really good.
I mean, we do have the quick analysis, just looking at what their contract looked like in 2022 and compared it against their estimate. Again, you know, most of it's just coming from the personnel side of things. It's 11.4% increase in just personnel costs, and then it looks like there's just some reorganization to kind of try to cushion some of these, you know, that huge cost from the personnel side of things.
Well, I think what they need to explain what that 11% is, you know, not just
Right.
the math. We can do
Right,
the math,
exactly.
but why is
Yeah,
it going up?
exactly, yep.
Especially since you guys said the contract was just negotiated, so that's not a new
That's what I
contract.
remember, it wasn't that long ago. so.
I think this may be, I thought it was 2 years ago that they negotiated that
Could be wrong,
contract.
but
Well, that'll be question number one.
Yeah.
Maybe you should let us negotiate a contract next time. All right. Any other questions on budget?
Well, I have a question regarding the cafeteria plan. So, do employees contribute anything to do they have co-pays, do they have deductibles? Do they have to put in a monthly portion of the cafeteria plan? I guess that's one part that,
Some do and some don't. It just depends on your age and the number of people you have on your policy. As far as co-pays and that depends on the policy you have, or the high deductible, low deductible. That determines that, but how much you actually have to pay out of your pocket depends on, again, your age and if the spouse is on there and if children are on there. If you have, for example, a couple with husband and wife and 2 kids and you're 45 or 50 years old, I'm gonna say you're gonna be paying out of pocket over and above what that amount is. Would that be correct, Mike?
Correct, yeah.
It depends on what plan they pick, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables.
There's a variable plan that they
Yeah.
get to pick what they need from the list of daycare, medical, dental,
Yeah, there-
health, HSAs. I mean, it's forever.
There's a lot of different
Yep.
variables that go into it, but essentially what the city says is here's 14, well, for 2023, is here's 1425 per month to spend the way you see best to fit. And then the employee picks and chooses what they want. So for health insurance, they pick between 2 different plans, but within those 2 plans, you can have a spouse, you can have kids. You know, you can have an HSA, you can have a have a plan that actually has co-pays and things like that. Then you have your dental plan, and then you've got short-term, long-term life insurance. You also have flex spending, where you can put money aside in order to pay for classes and whatnot. So yes, there's just a lot of different variables, and everybody, what they spend is different, so.
And then they spend, the employee spends over and above, gets taken out of their check for whatever they choose. But the list is like this long of things that they can choose from. It's all their benefits, basically.
But as Mike said, those other things like short-term, long-term disability, life, and dental come out of that amount.
Yeah,
That's
all of
withheld
that
from your
comes out
check.
of that amount.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still a little confused on that whole cafeteria stuff, so I'll probably have more questions, but I'm satisfied for now. Thank you.
On the question of the overage that, the 143,000 that could be applied towards the budget, where did that come from? Was that just a result of over budgeting? These are the savings left over?
Yeah, it's just an accumulation of all the prior years, net incomes essentially. And, you add up all that, and then you basically compare that against what's the next year's budget, right?
Yeah,
And
if
you wanna
we
make sure
don't.
you're saving 50% of next year's budget so you can cash flow the first 6 months of our operation. Because again, we only get paid twice a month, so we actually have
Twice
to
a
have.
year.
Or twice a year, it'd be nice twice a month. But, so we actually have to have 6 months of cash in our bank accounts in order to, basically cash flow our operation, so.
Yeah, and
Yep.
so,
But it comes from just just little variances each year that add up. And that's how the excess kind of comes about, so. I think Nate kind of mentioned some in his area that, we just had some, retirements, so we didn't fill those positions for X amount of, months, and then the next person comes on and they are at the start of their, their
Yep.
grade and step. So that little bit then gets added to the fund balance, so.
okay.
And
I-
over
every
COVID,
little
there were
bit of-
things.
Yep, every
that
little bit of
didn't
savings
return.
just keeps getting rolled right into your general fund balance from year to year, so.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the city wasn't taxing too much or anything like that, that results in this. It's
Right.
just
Yep. No,
little things that were slightly over budgeted or through circumstances, there's money left over.
correct.
Okay.
Yep, good question.
Okay, any other questions? All right, Nate, Mark, Mike, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you, guys. Great job.
All right, we'll move on to our second agenda item. Public forum discussion.
The public forum segment of the East Bethel City Council agenda provides an opportunity for residents to address council on items not included on the meeting agenda. Over the years, this item has been scheduled at various times on the council agenda, ranging from the last item to its current placement prior to the start of and separate from the regular council meeting. Due to repeated patterns of presentation at the public forum that exceeded the bounds of what is normally considered to be appropriate and respectful public behavior that began in January 2018, council approved scheduling the public forum as a separate item prior to each regular meeting on October 3rd, 2018. In addition to this agenda change, council approved that the public forum would not be broadcast on our media outlets, rebroadcast on Channel 10, or archived as a website video playback. Permanent records of the public forum are stored on disk for the period required by state statute record retention schedules, and minutes are available to the public. Discussion of returning to the public forum to an item in the body of the council meeting agenda was discussed at the August 2nd, 2021 work meeting, with the consensus to leave this scheduled as an item apart from the council meeting. Recently, requests have been made to return the public forum to the body of the regular agenda, along with its broadcast and video playback. This item is requested to be placed on the work meeting schedule for tonight, July 5th, 2022. Staff requests that council discuss the agenda position of the public forum and provide direction as necessary on this item.
I think, Brian, you asked for this to be on the agenda?
I did not.
I
Yeah.
think this was me this time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've had a few discussions over the years.
I know,
I brought it up in the past.
Yeah, and And I brought it up because I got a couple more calls, so I'm like, well, let me bring it up again. Because, and as I read this, I'm like, it sounded like council took it on themselves to punish all the residents for the actions of a few, that they didn't like their behavior at the public forum. The residents, ones who have called me, feel like they have a right to know what's going on in their entire community, and that it's, oh, what was the word they used? Undue difficulties, that's not the word they used, but to obtain and go back and have to listen to just a recording of it. It's not always the same people. I think it's just certain people who come up here have the courage to appear, and they speak on behalf of a lot of people. I think we're trying to control people, and I think that's not a good stance to take. So that's why I thought I would bring it up again, because they're calling me. Those are some of the issues they've presented to me, their side of their opinion. I think we should have it broadcast.
So nothing's changed. I mean, it's still the same comments we've had ever since we made the changes. People think that we're hiding things, yet this is a public meeting, right? There's 5 council members here and other witnesses that anyone can ask to what's going on. So there's no conspiracy.
I didn't say there was a
And I don't know how you think council is punishing residents.
Well, it actually kind of said what Jack read.
No, you said we're punishing residents.
Yeah, but it's based on what this said. People exceeded the bounds of what is normally considered to be appropriate and respectable public behavior that began in January. So therefore, council approved this rule that it wouldn't be broadcasting.
Well,
And that's punishing the whole city for behavior of a few.
How do you feel is punishing residents?
Because they can't hear and watch what is being said up there, based on the decision of
Right.
a couple of people up
Do you
here.
remember what was being said and everyone was watching and why they were watching it? It's because they were attacking one of our businesses repeatedly. And that's what, that's what.
And
drove it.
attacking us.
That's-
Well, you
well, it was most-
mainly.
it
It was mainly
most-
the
well,
business,
that
but
was
then-
before.
We're
but-
supposed to be attacked, but if we do things they don't like, that's their right to come up here
No, it's not.
and
Not
tell
to
us.
attack.
It's not their right. It clearly states in how, the guidelines for the public forum. We had residents that would not abide by that.
They,
And,
the word attack, they're criticizing us. It's not an attack.
no,
Well,
they were
there
attacking
was-
another
there's-
business. in the
There's
city.
open insults towards council members, and that is not respectful behavior.
And I've said this many times, the only thing we changed is not putting it on TV. And as soon as council made that change, we hardly have ever had public forums, certainly not the ones that were here all the time, making a presentation so they can be on TV. That's not what this is about. That's not what public forum is about.
It's not
It's
for a
about
personal
raising
platform.
issues to council. So that was the abuse, and it is why council decided to take it off the air. We still have public forums every regular meeting, so.
Well, I still disagree, and I think it should be broadcast, and I agree with those residents.
Well, I understand that, I respect
So
that, but I'm
I-
just telling you the reason why, and it wasn't to punish residents. It's not to hide anything.
If you reread what, I didn't hiding anything other than they have a right to know, and that's not hiding anything. It's just they want to be able to know what's going on, what other residents say.
And they can,
They still can get
they
it.
can be here.
But it's,
Be here,
they can,
still get it.
some of them work, some of them.
They can
can't
ask
be
you
here.
what was said, right?
They can, but my interpretation won't be the exact same thing.
Well, they record this too, you know, they can get it recorded, and they ask for,
And that's the hard part
they
for
can ask for a
them.
data request.
They have to go through extra steps and stuff to get it, and they don't feel
Or
that's
they can
fair.
ask any one of us if they couldn't be here at the meeting, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess my personal feelings, I'm 50-50 on it. I wouldn't mind having it back. I always enjoyed it having within the meeting.
Mhm.
Because we did attract more people, and before certain circumstances happened, it was, quite a few people did come up and speak, and I always enjoyed it. I wouldn't be 100% opposed to changing that, moving it back into the meeting, but we may have to institute a couple rules of what, I don't know what rules we would, but so that we don't have the same results that resulted in this being moved outside the meeting.
Well, I think the only thing that makes sense is you still limit it to 15 minutes total. You limit it to 3 minutes, and at the end of your 3 minutes, you're done. And that's part of the problem, and it's hard to do. And then the biggest problem is the decorum. When you come up to speak in front of city officials or your neighbors that are sitting out here, you are respectful of what they say. It doesn't come across that way. It invariably turns into a he said, she said, or it turns into, even after you explain it, a continuing argument. Or you dig up things that happened 25 years ago that nobody has any control over.
Well, and any of that can happen regardless of whether it's broadcast or not.
Yes,
So it's about how we, or I, or how we look at it, manage the public forum. And we've had success, we've had challenges in the past. But this is really only about whether it's on TV or not.
right.
So it's whether or not it's entertainment or not. Right? A lot of people will agree.
Entertaining.
That is, the complaints I got was, that was their entertainment, you know, when we took it off the air. So, you know, we've had people for public forums. I mean, the light on 221st that came out, public forum, that didn't matter whether it's broadcast on TV or not. Sure, it'd been great for public to see that, but, you know, and maybe, and maybe things have changed, maybe they haven't, I don't know. But the public forum still works for its intended purpose. And we don't have the hassles we had, you know, years ago, whether or not that issue's changed or not, but.
I don't know, I've been on council almost 4 years now, and I haven't seen anybody come to that podium that was in this 4 years, that it hasn't been broadcast the whole time, that would deserve it not being broadcast. Whether,
really? In 4 years, you haven't
You-
seen
you-
somebody who shouldn't be on
I
TV?
think you need to go back and look at your minutes for public forums, so your memory's
I
short.
mean, there were a few things that were a little contentious, but
Well,
nothing that wouldn't have been
ultimately,
able to be broadcast.
ultimately, didn't we change this public forum format 4+ years ago?
2018, right?
2018.
Yep.
So, with respect, unless you're watching some of the public forum meetings, you may not have seen the incidences that inspired this change.
I probably didn't, because I didn't go back and watch a lot of old meetings. I watched a couple, but there was just an issue of one of the residents that was having an issue on something the council voted on regarding their property.
Okay, I'm not hearing a consensus to change. Am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I think it would be split. So,
Okay?
We can always bring it back up in another 6 months or,
Which we
12
do anyway, so
months
it
or-
seems like
Probably
at least every year, so.
yeah.
I'll get some more
And
phone
which,
calls
you know,
and bring it back.
which is fine, you know, it's good to have that discussion, so. But public forum's still there, so. Okay,
I'd like to just bring one more issue on that public forum. If we do decide to go back, I had a conversation with Carrie this morning. If we start at like 7 to 7:15, we can save ourselves over $500. We save an extra set of minutes, we save an extra tape, so if we ever do go back, that would be something to throw in there for consideration too.
There's a cost savings.
Yeah, cost savings.
Yeah,
She said at least $500, maybe more.
if we have a public
If we
forum.
ever have a public forum.
We've only had
Right.
3 this year, I think.
But I mean, you get,
Yeah.
you know, otherwise you have 2 sets of minutes and you have to have 2 tapes, so you can go down
Yeah.
to 1 tape and 1 set of minutes, so.
That's one of the things I brought up last
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
or last time it was brought up, so.
Yep,
It's cost of decorum sometimes, I
Yep.
guess, so. Okay, anything else? Entertain a
Make-
motion to adjourn.
Make a motion adjourn.
Second?
Motion made in second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? That meeting, or that motion passes, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.